Welcome to the Services SETA Stakeholder Engagement 2022. I want to start by thanking all of you who are present in this venue in DUT. One, for your punctuality and patience as you wait for us to start. I'm reminded of what our former state president, Mr. Nelson Mandela, used to say, that punctuality is a sign of respect. So when a person honors time, it shows that they honor those with whom they are in engagement with. So we really appreciate that. We do not take it light. We also want to indicate that this session is live streaming. There are those who have joined us remotely who are live and participating in the session. So it's not only the audience that is here. Without really wasting any further time, I would start by introducing myself to you. My name is Kaya. My surname is Bly. I'm a senior manager employed by Services SETA and responsible for infrastructure development and strategic partnerships. I am not alone from Services SETA who's present here. We have a team of management and supporting team who have put together this session to come and engage with yourselves. I would like to introduce them to you so that you know who you are engaged with. I would start, we are led by one of our board members present here, who I will actually start by introducing, and I'm going to request that as I call out your name, just stand up, wave to the audience, and then we will go on introducing other colleagues who are present. The board member present with us is Ms. Sitole. Thank you, ma'am. We are also joined by our executive managers. Without any order of preference, I would start with Ms. Mamabele Motla, who is the executive manager responsible for our planning, strategic planning department. I would then follow with Mr. Sbusiso Dladla, who's our executive manager responsible for corporate support services. And then we also have Mr. Andile Spengana, who's responsible for strategic partnerships and collaborations. We also have our senior managers, Mr. Paul Dlamini, who's responsible for our learning interventions. We have Ms. Yewan Demfebe, who's responsible for our organizational compliance. We also have Ms. Tutumwelase, who's responsible for our brand management. She's right there at the back. I said stand up. Thank you. We also have our managers with us, Ms. Toinette Williams, who is in our chambers. We also have Ms. Hlengiwe Dube, who's managing our provincial office in KZN. And then we have support staff from organizational brand management and support staff from our provincial office. The officials, save for the board member who are present here, are at your disposal for engagement on any matter relating to Services SETA which might be of concern to you. But before I go at length with why we are here for, I am going to call upon Mr. Andile Spengana, who will be representing our CEO in this issue, to come and give us a background of this session as a way of opening, to say what is the engagement about and to set the tone for our deliberations. Mr. Andile Spengane, Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Program Director. And greetings are in order to all our stakeholders, those that are virtually connected and those that are physically here. But I think it will be important for me to just briefly touch on the representation that I have seen in the responses that we have received. Indeed, this is greatly appreciated that we have had a great positive response, and we therefore welcome our representative from professional body, representatives from private skills development providers, representative from institutions of higher learning, as articulated in the NSDP, representatives from industry, and representatives from organized labor. As welcoming and swiftly crossing over to the purpose of the day, I would like to really appreciate the opportunity. It is an honor indeed to be representing our CEO, who would have been with us here, but also acknowledge that the CEO would be also representing the board's vision. So we are here after quite a long space in our engagement with our stakeholders due to various reasons, amongst others being COVID-19 environment, which kept us far apart. And we were so eagerly looking forward to an opportunity of having physical engagement with our stakeholders. And at least now we are beginning to realize that we have had a lull, and we realize that it's important to keep on updating one another on organizational developments aligned to our driving national strategy, the NSDP 2030. There is quite a lot of strategic and operational developments that have been happening within our organization that we felt it important that given an opportunity like this one, let's start engaging with our stakeholders. It's very important that as we implement the NSDP, we are guided and informed by the views of our stakeholders so that we remain aligned to what we seek as a collective to achieve. Amongst some of the areas that we'll be sharing with you today, moving swiftly now to the purpose, is to ensure that we bring you on board into our transition from legacy qualifications delivery to new occupational-based qualifications, which is one of our focus areas that seeks to ensure that our skills development, as articulated in the NSDP 2030, is of quality, is of relevance, is addressing the priority skills focus areas demanded by our economy. Because NSDP seeks to ensure that together with business, labor, delivery providers from the supply side, we ensure delivery of skills development that creates economic growth and contributes towards employment. We are confronted with a huge unemployment, more in particular within our youth, that we have to ensure we address as a collective. One of the principles articulated furthermore, aligned to the goals of the NSDP, is that of strategic partnerships and collaborations in our pursuit to the delivery of quality skills development. So it is clear that Service SETA alone, as a conduit between the industry and the institutions of learning, cannot be able to achieve a successful implementation of occupational qualifications in particular. There are three focus areas in these occupational qualifications: the theory, the practical, and the workplace. We invite the industry to open its doors for our beneficiaries so that they can gain value from the workplace opportunities. Because it's clear that as we are supporting and facilitating this skills development, we want them to be employable and most in particular, to be able to be job creators themselves. Hence, we add upon entrepreneurship as one of these critical focus strategic pillars in our delivery of occupational qualifications. We want to create entrepreneurship opportunities for all our beneficiaries to be able to create jobs over and above being available in the labor market for job opportunities for employment. Self-employment is just one of the most critical areas that we want to take these occupational qualifications in terms of supporting enterprise development. But last but not the least is the importance of transformational imperatives in our delivery of skills development, whereby we are looking at empowering people in the rural and township economies, women, persons with disability, and the youth. So those transformational imperatives are embedded in all our skills development facilitation. We are also encouraging working together with other SETAs in collaboration so that we can have impactful skills development interventions. We have realized that operating in silos from government institutions, the private sector, and other SETAs, together with various key role players, be it from the funding side and creation of markets as an opportunity for our entrepreneurs, will not enable the success in the delivery of NSDP 2030. With those few words, ladies and gentlemen, let's just work together. Let's just share information and knowledge that will empower all the participants in the skills revolution to take quality skills forward and ensure impactful, successful interventions. With those few words then, let me just thank you and appreciate your presence and those that are participating virtually. We hope we're going to have a lot of views and inputs from you that we'll take home, and they will shape our action plans towards ensuring that we don't keep on talking, but we get into implementation. But of importance is that that action should be well informed by yourselves. We recognize the tribal authorities, the local municipalities as key role players, as we also drive the district development model in terms of our delivery of skills. So these are some of the government strategic focus areas that we should be addressing in facilitating skills development. So we call upon all parties to rally together, put all hands on the deck, and we ensure that we deliver this mandate together. That's the only way we can achieve success. And we believe that with the information that's going to be shared by the presenters, various presenters, it's going to be a helpful information that will make yourself much more ready to implement the strategic actions and the focus operational areas that we seek to move forward with you as partners. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spengane, for laying the ground for us. At least we know that this is not a tense session. We are not here to communicate problems. We are not here to communicate challenges, but rather to engage, shape ourselves on how we need to move. As you were talking, I'm reminded of a concept of the VUCA world, that we live in an environment that's highly volatile, that's highly uncertain. It's ever changing, it's ambiguous, and successful organizations thrive not only because they are smart, but it's because of their ability to adapt to the changes as are happening. And I think one of the things we want to communicate is that where are we as Services SETA today, and where do we intend going? And we want to invite you to position ourselves, place yourself on our pathway so that you can follow and fit in where we are going. There's a quite loosely used words in the townships where they say, "Uzoyithola kanjani uhlele ekhoneni?" How are you going to get it while you sit in your corner? So you need to come up, engage with us, ask us questions, and these engagements are the channel and platform through which we are able to find one another. I had a discussion before the session earlier with a few gentlemen outside. And one of the things one gentleman pointed out, he says, but we always come to these forums and talk, and that which we talk about, we never follow through. And I say, exactly, these forums are aimed and made for giving you information to say, this is who we are, this is where we are, this is what we are doing. Now, the challenge is on you to make yourself and position yourself in such a way that you fit in the path and you make yourself relevant. In that way, you become more economically adjusted to fit in our trajectory, and we can work and travel the road together. Without wasting time, I'm going to invite upon Mr. Sbusiso Dladla, who's going to give us the Services SETA overview, and I invite you to pay careful attention to his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blyer. Thank you, Mr. Spengane, for the introduction and aligning to the purpose of today's session. As Mr. Blyer mentioned, my name is Sbusiso Dladla, the Executive Manager for Corporate Services within the Services SETA. My role today is basically to present the SETA overview. As Mr. Blyer mentioned, we need to find out in terms of where we come from, where we are now, and where we are going, and how we align to the national priorities that our department, as the Department of Higher Education, would like to take us through. I have to mention that it's been, I think, almost 2.5 years since we've had a full-on stakeholder engagement session where you are actually engaging with the people. So it's a nice welcome at the same time. Unfortunately, I can't mute your faces or your videos, so I still have to look at everyone, which is a pleasant experience. Thank you all for coming. I'm going to take you through just basically an introduction of who we are, our priorities, our goals, also where we are in terms of our current performance, our financial standing, and also the projects that we are aligning with. And then in my closure, I will just round up on the priorities and also our service delivery mandates towards yourselves as providers, as our employers, and all strategic partners. So in terms of us as a SETA, our priority currently is the national agenda, which is the NDP 2030. The NDP basically highlights our apex priorities that aim to eliminate poverty and also reduce inequalities by the year 2030. We target our goals in terms of a 5-year cycle, the current cycle ending at 2025, and the next cycle will then take us on all the way up to 2030. We're looking at goals that are meant to energize our people, building capabilities, creating an inclusive economy, and also promoting leadership and partnership through society. In the main, we have 9 outcomes. These outcomes range from the production of occupational qualifications, linking education to the workplace, being that whatever we deliver on must be very strategic and be directed to enhancing our workforce and also our employers within our space. Also looking at improving the level of skill within South Africa, encouraging and supporting worker-initiated training, being that those who are already within employment, they need to be upskilled, looking at supporting the growth of the public college system, which is your TVET colleges and also your community-based education colleges as well. So basically, if we build confidence within our public college space, we're then able to produce more learners through that system, and therefore having an available workforce that is educated and skilled enough through your classroom training and your theoretical training, and also looking at career development opportunities and career development services, looking at what current careers are relevant. As we all know, each and every year, the top skills and the top priorities in terms of education change. So we also need to ensure that we are aligned with the moving trends and also the changes in times. Our vision is to create a flourishing services sector that creates economic growth and inclusive opportunities for all South Africans. If you take a deeper look at our vision, it actually aligns to the NDP that I had just presented previously in the slide, in that the outcome is basically the same. Then if I can take you through to our mission is the facilitation of skills development for employment and entrepreneurship in the services sector and the national economic growth. The introduction of entrepreneurship is quite key because some of our programs are aligned to supporting your small business, your SMMEs, your cooperatives, so that we can also have an impact in the economy, not through education only, but also having a viable output when it comes to our GDP input. Where we are now, we would basically like to highlight some key business issues that we are dealing with. First being the economy. I think everyone in the room here and online can attest to the fact that our economy has taken a slump. Not only does it affect in terms of industry, it also affects on personal livelihood. So the poor economic growth that we've experienced and the high levels of unemployment also affect us, because then we need to come up with programs that can also redress the level of unemployment. In the main being your reskilling type programs, where colleagues who had lost their jobs are able to get skills development opportunities that will reskill them for better employment or employment in other avenues and areas. We also need to look at programs that can also enhance businesses to stay afloat, which is then on your SMME capacitation, your co-op support programs, to also enable people to actively participate in our economy, which is naturally affects all of us. I'll touch on COVID-19. The last 2 years at the most has been quite a difficult space in time, especially through COVID. We ourselves as a SETA have seen a lot of businesses go down, training providers that were unable to keep up with the harsh realities of COVID. And by that, in the main, means that we also have to align to the economic recovery plans of government, also of our department, so that we can try and weather the storm that COVID has had on us as a institution, as part of the department, and naturally part of our government, and also the general public and society as a whole. So one of the priorities we're looking at is to try and reduce the severe impact that COVID has had on us, and also to change in the way we do our delivery, to adjust to what we call now the new normal, in terms of program delivery, service delivery as well, and also program output and the types of programs we need to deliver on. This also then leads me to business processes. Our business processes, if you were to do a comparison over the last 10 years that we've been in operation, well, even the prior before then, they continuously change, and we continuously need to reevaluate ourselves to see if we're aligned to what is the current need now. One simple example is the movement towards online operations and the use of the internet. So meaning that we also need to look at delivery of your e-learning type projects when it comes to your accreditations, your workplace verifications, looking at options that we can deliver online rather than physical as we did in the past, which means then our operations and our operations manual and the processes that we follow also need to change and align to the new way of doing things. We also are focusing on our performance. Performance naturally dropped over the COVID period because a lot of programs, especially within the services sector, could not be activated due to the closure of training programs, the closure of workplaces, and the closure of some of the businesses, and also which then had an impact on our actual performance, which means that we also need to realign ourselves internally to be able to further develop better processes that will enable us to improve on performance. We've seen a positive impact over the past 2 years when it comes to our performance over the time. But we obviously, naturally, we do not need to slack, but we need to actually improve on on what we have learned and also get better results going forward so that it shows that we are actually serving according to our mandate. The other key business issue was on the overcommitments. I think in the past couple of years, we've also shared on all our stakeholder engagement the challenge that we've been having on overcommitments. So we have then ensured that we have a rationalization process in place that looks at where we have committed our funds in terms of projects against our budget, which ones we can activate, which ones we can reprioritize in terms of looking at the relevance of the projects at the time, and those that can be cancelled for those companies that are not there, or those companies that have diverted their operations, so they will not be interested in rendering those programs. So it's a continuous analysis of where we are and what is there to try and reduce our commitments balance so that we can then open up other opportunities for training and development initiatives. The next slide basically indicates some of our key interventions. The first being your organizational development. I touched on the business process side of the organizational development process, being us looking at our business, how we do things, and then how we can better improve. A part of this is also looking at us internally as an organization. How do we operate in terms of our key roles and responsibilities? So we need to realign and relook at what we are offering, how we actually do the job, and what type of skills we need internally to do our jobs. So that then ties in with the organizational development progress. When we develop and are operating at high optimal levels, it means that we are better serving our key partners and our strategic partners, and also the key beneficiaries, which is basically your learners. Then on the system stabilization, also ties in with the business optimization. It bears us no success when we have systems that do not yield the intended result. So we must always continuously review our systems so that we ensure that they are easy to use, streamlined to what the outcome is, and we cut on some of the red tape. If we can take 6 steps out of 10 in a process that takes 10 steps, then it's easier then to reduce so that we can be better efficient and be able to process more and on time. And also try maintaining our uptime levels at 99.99%, if I'm not mistaken. So we try our best to keep uptime so that we ensure that anytime there's a need to access our system, you are able to. Then on occupational qualifications, as I think Mr. Spengane alluded to earlier, this is the new phase that we are moving into, which is the training of occupational qualifications, which is now the direction that we are looking into. But the colleagues in the second part of the program will touch more in terms of the detail. But the new phase that we're moving towards is something that means that also we need to realign ourselves to be able to better serve and deliver on this new direction that we are taking. The next is on audit. Audit is basically a means test that shows that the work that we are doing, can be verified, is justified, and can also be proven as valid, as accurate, and as complete. So when it comes to our audit processes, we're also working very hard to track the challenges that we've been facing, how we can improve, so that we can then improve also on our audit outcomes every year within our internal audit services and also the external audit that is performed on us, so that it bears a true reflection of the work that is done so far. Then in terms of partnerships, my colleague, Mr. Spengane, is actually heading the Strategic Partnerships Department. So we do not naturally deliver the programs, but we have to partner with everyone, being our employers, being the public sector, being the PSET sector, which we operate in, being your skills development providers, your skills development facilitators, and any and other partners that we can better serve and deliver on our programs with. This is a key element for our success as well, and we have to ensure that we continuously engage and improve on our partnership standing. The business process optimization, I think I've touched at length on that one. Basically meaning that if we operate efficiently, effectively, and economically, then we better serve our greater stakeholders at large. One of the other initiatives that we've introduced was moving away from your delivery-based and invoice-based model for when it comes to our programs to a tranche-based model, which basically means that we have certain milestones that one has to meet, that then payment will then be released. It's easier for the management of the process because as a provider or as a training institution yourself, you're able to plan better when it comes to the delivery, and you know which milestones would need to be achieved upfront so that you can then better claim and better deliver on your projects as well. It also assists us in terms of our budgeting and ensuring that we are aligned to our financial management processes as well. Then on the commitments rationalization, I touched on earlier to say that we're also looking at our commitments register against our budget to say then how best do we reduce the numbers so that we can better open up other opportunities going forward. It's through the initiation of current projects that have been committed, through looking at those projects that can then be cancelled by virtue of the training providers not being available to do the training anymore, and also looking at realignment in terms of what is priority in terms of where we are going, and then having that discussion with the training providers to say, this is now the current focus and alignment, will you be able to deliver against this particular mandate? Over the past 2 years, we've been able to reduce our commitments in 2021 by 672 million, and in 2023, currently, we are sitting at a reduction of 58 million, and we estimate at least around 150 by the end of March 2023. Then just to give a snapshot of the financial overview, I will touch just lightly on the ones that we've highlighted in red, which basically show those key elements within our funding model. The first one being the discretionary grant reserve. Am I still connected? Oh. The discretionary grant reserve basically has shown that coming from your 2018-19, having a lesser amount as compared to your 2021 of 508. It means this is the available portion that we're able to spend on our programs. It is higher because it's basically tracking back from the impact of COVID, where we could not really do a lot in terms of new projects, where we only had to, we processed majority of the old. And then if we look at the fourth column, which is the commitments one, as I spoke to earlier about the reduction of the commitments, which will then enable us to better also provide on programs. If you see the two, they're inter-aligned. The increasing of the reserve, it means the reduction of the commitments as well. So if you see, we've moved from your 5124 to 3398, and for the 21-22 year, which is the one in yellow, was further reduced also to 2.6. So these are the primary outputs that we are looking at in terms of the reduction of our commitments, the increasing of the available spend on our current projects, and better serving on our APP. What is also key to note, if you look at the third column from the bottom, the trajectory of our performance, we moved from 18-19 from a 97%, and then to 2019-20, we had 73%, and then the year where we were hit the hardest because we could not implement new, and we were rather servicing the old, where is that when we reduced to 40%. So last year, we were actually able to then improve on our performance to 80% because then workplaces, training institutions opened. So we do keep a track on our performance. And in terms of our targeted performance for the new year, will naturally be, the baseline would be the 80% because you do not want to target lesser than what you've achieved in the previous year. So we're looking at actually improving on that 80%. And you can also see on the next line on the number of learners, where we had 31,000 in 2018-19, which then also dipped to 237 in 2020-21. And then last year we were able to then again increase to 14,269. So this is just a snapshot of where we are coming from. We had that period of difficulty in terms of delivering, but we are gently coming back in terms of our optimal performance levels. And just on the performance update, it's similar to what I touched on in the previous slide. The movement from 2020-21 being 40%, with an average of 237 learners that we knew that were able to be enrolled in the current year. It doesn't mean that we only service 237. There were other learners in the pipeline from older projects who were still within the training interventions. But in terms of new, we had the 237. It then improved to 14,269 in the next year, where we're then able to open up training intervention and training spaces and workplaces. And then currently 22-23, we're targeting 18,270. So far, we've enrolled around 5,900 learners, which is at the end of our second quarter. So we are looking in a positive space to be able to achieve on our target for the year. And hopefully we'll also then improve on the actual target and overachieve, which is what we would like to see coming to the end of the year. The targets are aligned to our APP, which includes your learnerships, internships, your artisans, your bursary funding, your skills programs, and also your RPL and AET programs as well. Then just a snapshot of our transformational imperatives. As alluded to earlier, we also focus on the national mandate, which is to improve on our transformational imperatives. Just a highlight of a few, being the first, gender. We have a higher subscription when it comes to the female learner of 10,389, which was 73% of what we're able to enroll. And then your males being at 27%. And then if we look at your ethnicity, the learners for black were higher than the Indian, colored and white, being at 90%, with the split of the 6 and the 2 being within Indian, colored and white. Then in terms of the employed and unemployed, yes, our primary focus is on increasing access to occupationally directed programs and learning programs, which is why you will see the unemployment number is much higher than your employed. But it also shows that we also focus on worker-initiated training and employed-based training so that we upskill those who are currently within the workforce. The next slide is basically showing a snapshot of where our spend went in terms of our 21-22 enrollments. You will note that services SETA's employers received the chunk when it comes to our spend of 57%. Our government institutions then received 9%. And then the other, which other includes your NPOs, CBOs, your professional bodies, your trade unions, had received the third highest, which was 11%. And then we had programs for employers who fall within other SETAs, but using services SETA qualifications. They also received a spend of 7%. And then your private training providers or skills development providers received the second highest, which is the 16%. If you compare that with our current year, you'll note the trend remains the same, with your employers receiving the bulk, our SETA employers receiving the bulk at 24, government institutions at 22, the other being at 14, and your employers falling within other SETAs, training through our qualifications, sitting at 17%, and your private training providers then receiving the 23% chunk. So the trend remains the same. This is purely due to the delivery model and the applications that we receive, and also our priorities to support within our sector as well, and also create further opportunities to open access to programs, both for learners entering into the training space and also for trainers and employers to be able to broaden the skills levels within their own spaces. Then, it's the same slide. On the last slide is basically a high-level summation of our commitment. Our commitment, first of all, is collaboration. As I mentioned earlier, we really need to drive our strategic partnerships and use them wisely. As a funding institution, we do not deliver the programs ourselves, but we need to ensure that where they are being delivered, they're delivered of high quality and value for the beneficiaries of those programs. So, and it also increases us in terms of the space that we need to operate in the main, your rural areas, your peri-urban areas, and also in your urban training, so that we do not focus training only on urban, but we also look at the other demarcations within the country to be able to deliver our programs fairly, and also looking at the national imperatives that we're driving with regards to what I just presented earlier. We need to touch on all the requirements that we need to fit into. Also, we need to improve on stakeholder value. Improving on stakeholder value means that we need to look within ourselves in terms of how we deliver our services and our program delivery. One being, on our systems, two being on the people, being us, how do we better serve our stakeholders as well, and then on the programs and, and operational requirements that we also need to deliver on, how best can we reduce redundancies and reduce the inefficiencies within our processes so that we can better improve on delivery. Industry development meaning that apart from the initiatives that we have that are directed at the learner, how do we also capacitate industry as well in terms of better saving of our programs and better use of our services as well. An example to use here would be your mandatory grants allocations for employers. How do we then capacitate employers to be in a better position to access mandatory grants, which will also improve on the level of skilling that our services sector would have delivered on. The last one is on the NDP goals, the NSDP goals, aligned to the NDP 2030. These are the goals that drive us as an institution, looking at your building capacity for your public college system, looking at support for your employers, looking at support for employee development, looking at support for unemployed learner development, the provisioning of the skills within the relevant sectors, and also being relevant and in line with what are the requirements of the SETA. It does not make sense to fund programs that do not have a direct benefit within our sector and obviously that drive economic growth. And speaking of economic growth, looking at also your small business support programs that we run, your cooperative support, your NGO support, so that we can also have an impact on our GDP growth and better drive economic development and sustainability within the country. On my end, I am done with the presentation, so I'd like to say thank you, and I will hand over back to you, Mr. Bly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dladla. Colleagues, we are going to start pause now and have a question and answering session on what has been given to you. Like I said earlier on, we are not ticking a box. We want to have a conversation which is meaningful. You know, all of us, I think here, are parents. At some point, when we start our families, we project on the type of families we want to have. That when I have kids, this is the type of education I want for them. And we always pitch it very high. We want the best schools for our kids. We want the best medical care. And when kids are born, we even make this commitment to them that if you pass well, when you go to university, I'm going to take you to this one, I'm going to take you to this school and all that. And the reality is that when life happens, you realize that, hey, I can't afford to take this child to that school that I wanted. You settle for that which you can afford at that time. And at times, when a child is of age and say, you promised me to go to that institution, there's a collision between you and the child now. And they get angry with you. But I wanted to go there. But at times you talk to them, make them understand that material conditions are such that you can't. This is what we can afford. But that does not break down the relationship between you and your child because of that. You then sit down and work together to find that which is acceptable under the circumstances. And I think in a nutshell, this is what we as Services SETA have come to say to you. What Busiso has given you is what we had set out to do. But we've also said, based on what we set out to do, this is what we could do under the circumstances. And based on the current circumstances, this is what we want to do. And I think the later presentation that will come, we will tell you that this is what we are now setting ourselves to do and to position ourselves. And within the organization, there are also internal processes, one of them being the organizational design process we are currently undertaking to say how do we as an institution position ourselves to achieve and realize our mandate. So we want you to join us in this journey of shaping us, but in the process, helping yourselves with the information we are imparting to make sure that you are aligned, not to only participate in our processes, but to get value out of them. With these few words, I want to invite any of you who has a clarity-seeking question based on what has been said, or who has a question to ask in response to what has been said, or who wishes to make a suggestion or a comment based on what has been said thus far. We do have roving mics. I would invite anyone who wishes to say anything to raise a hand. A mic will be brought closer to them. We will identify you numerically. So we will allocate a number. We will take 1 up to 3 at first, see what the appetite is, and then we will respond at those intervals. I will pause here to see if there are hands. Number 1. So far we only have 1. Let's deal with 1. I would request that when you ask a question, please rise, introduce yourself and the institution you represent, and pose a question. This is purely to know who we are having a conversation with. It's not aimed at victimizing you beyond this process. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Mic check, is it working? Okay, mic check. Yeah, it is working. I'm Sicelo Shange from LNM Fundanati Institute. I'm one of the programs coordinator for our community-based organization and NPO. My first question, thank you so much, Mr. Dladla, for the presentation. It's regarding the digital divide. I am very centric on sustainability. So if you said you guys are aiming to have electronic, rather, e-learning program and migrating to the digital era we are approaching. I mean, we are fast approaching the 4th industrial revolution. How are we willing to bridge and provide justice for underserved communities? In the context of services SETA, how are we going to bridge the digital divide for underserved communities? Because services SETA will come and say, hey, we have this program, computer literacy, but then how would you provide a program for someone who's never used a computer in their entire existence? How will they use a software when they've never even navigated a smartphone? So that's my question in terms of the digital divide, which stakeholders are going to be on board. And then the second question is regarding the budget allocations in terms of sustainability. There's so much lesser of the percentage for community-based organizations. But then when we speak of social issues that South Africa is facing, we do the main work, especially grassroots workers. We do the work on par, on board, but so much less is spent in comparison to your government, your private sector and SETA employers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do not see any other hand. Yes, number 2. There is a mic there.
Thank you, Kaya. My name is David Paladin. I'm co-founder of the Female Interactive Training Network, services accredited since 2003. Just want to support the gentleman on what he said, the last sentiment, regarding rural, deep rural, persons with disability, and the entire aspirations of the SETA to try and address the 4IR. I'm old, I'm cynical, so please bear with me. You spoke about victimization. This is my personal opinion. I just want to share, Kaya. I've been with the SETA scenario for too many years. And the presentations that the learned individuals have given me is no different from the ones that I've sat in way back in 2003, 2004. There is an adage, and I love the way you also rely on very learned people telling us things, and we'll need to learn from them. If we are not doing anything differently in our organization, how do we expect to achieve different results? That's my question.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hand. Do we have any hands or comments online? Nothing so far. Okay, I'm going to allow the members of the executive management to respond to these 2 inputs that have been made. In any order, I'll use this mic.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bly, and thank you for our audience members for the questions. Let me start with yourself, Bucelo, ne? You said Celo. Sicelo, thank you, sir. You spoke about the digital divide and the e-learning training that we plan to issue. And I think I'll also tie with Devin as well in terms of how then do we serve underserved communities as well. You start by, if you look back in terms of the NSDP and the process, one of our key pillars is increasing access, right? But increasing access doesn't mean increasing access to the learning program. You also need to have the actual place where the delivery can happen. What SETA has done in the past is they've invested in your, what do we call them? Skills development centers, which are linked to TVET colleges and community-based colleges. These are primarily driven in rural areas, right? So then it makes it easier because then if you remove the actual institution from an urban area and you place it in a place where multiple people within that particular community can access, then it provides a better opportunity. So that's the one part. The second element to that is then you provide your computer equipment, which is at the center. So the beneficiaries can then actually be able to go there directly and access the equipment. We also, then the third part is actually the actual program. We do have basic computer programs that we teach, which is, I think we call it end user, but other teachers call it multiple names, but it's actually entry-level computer skills, which also tie into our ARBIT programs as well. So it's all interlinked. So that's just the one way that we're trying to also improve on our access there. It will naturally not touch the entire space, but I mean, a first step is better than no step at all, if I'm correct. The other part that we do, which is an above and beyond, we actually have mobile trucks which are fully kitted with computer equipment. These are the ones that we are running cooperative training programs now on a platform that we actually developed, which is our e-learning platform, and also in partnership with other accredited providers, so that we actually take the trucks to the areas where for that particular week we'll run a program for skills development. So there'll be designated individuals who will actually sit with the beneficiaries and take them through that training program. It's ran quite well, and we have quite positive numbers in our first cycle, which was last year. We are currently running the second cycle now in the current year. So there are initiatives. The other element is also providing information through our websites on different programs that the other SETAs also offer, so that apart from services SETA, you have also additional information that you can then further engage on and better assist our communities as well. And then on the budget allocation, the training for, like you mentioned, the communities versus the budget. So our budget is done on a holistical basis, right? So we look at your, let's say for example, you've got 100 Rand that you want to spend on for the year. That 100 Rand has to service about 7 different training interventions. So we split it between the training interventions. Then within those training interventions, then we look at the priorities. We look at the female child, we look at your disability learning, we look at your rural, we look at your community-based training as well, your CBOs, your community-based organizations. So we do have the allocation pre-planned ahead. Obviously, when we do the implementation, then the scene changes by virtue of, depending on who's got the necessary skills to actually deliver on the program, and also who's got the national footprint to deliver on the program. So where we then identify gaps in terms of low numbers and low uptake, then we come up with programs to then try and do what we mentioned, which is stakeholder capacitation, meaning that we must capacitate training providers on week to be able to deliver on the programs in those specific areas. We must also capacitate employers to have a broader range in terms of where they can train. Your TVET, your community-based education and training institutions as well, they also assist in providing that kind of support. So there is a holistic but targeted approach that we follow. And then, yeah, I think that's my response to you, Stelo. And Devin, we spoke about the rural development and the disability element. I hope I've covered you with my response to Stelo on how we try to serve those communities. And then you also mentioned how do we then improve in terms of delivery if you're still keeping to the same message, if I got you correctly. So what we naturally do on an annual basis is prepare what we call a sector skills plan and a strategic plan. Basically, that plan is driven by research. We go back and look at what we serve in terms of our industries, what is needed out there, what is relevant, which is the first part of it. So once we've identified what we actually need to do to serve impact and also be relevant to all our stakeholders, the second element is then we look at what is needed, how do we then best serve it, and how do we keep changing on our operations, and how do our operations better serve and better benefit the particular communities and also our stakeholders that we need to serve. So by continuously analyzing where we are as an institution, then we are better served to keep improving. Naturally, improvement is only seen from outside. Within, you see yourself as improving, but the better test is for someone else to actually say, yes, you've improved, or no, you have not improved, which is why we have such sessions where we can have conversations with everyone. That's why we have your open communication lines within the SETA, so that people can tell us where we are failing and where we are succeeding, so that we can have a litmus test in terms of our operations and try and change matters and try and improve continuously and continuously engage. So I think if I can pause there, you will then indicate if I've been able to cover all the questions or if I've missed any.
No, there's a simple indication of knowing if you've missed any. They will raise a hand again and we will give them a second bite. Thank you very much, Mr. Dladla. You can take a chair. I deliberately made the example of a family setup because it works perfectly in responding to how we do things. We are not here to make excuses of why this had not been done. Because, like I said, in a family, a father would say, I can't afford to do this, not because I don't want to. I have no means, but I want to do this. But importantly, we know that as our stakeholders, you've got your own businesses with which you are engaged with daily. You are not keeping tab on what we are doing on a day-to-day basis. And we think it's important that we use platforms like this to also share with you other things we are doing. Then you get to understand, oh, when they are not doing this, they are preoccupied with this. An example is this model of developing skills development centers. By legislation, if you read the Skills Development Act, the Skills Development Levies Act, our primary function is to fund skills development through different learning interventions and all that. However, a few years back, as early as 2013, 2014, 15, the organization entertained a thought which is in sync with the question posed here. We are funding skills development. Where do learners in rural areas attend these classes for which we want to fund learning for? Now it means a child based in Mkuze, the nearest place where they can attend is either Pongol or Richards Bay, because there is no skills development center there. So even if you want to benefit the learners in that area, there is no institution of learning where they can go and sit and learning is imparted. And the board took a deliberate decision, and I want to term it a developmental orientated poverty alleviation approach. Because we took a decision to build skill centers, albeit not our mandate. And we went to report to the minister that this is what we are going to do. And the minister said, actually, all SETAs must join you in doing that, because it's actually promoting access to education. And that is how we make sure that those learners who are not exposed to these other developments, they are then brought up to speed. And I invite you to go and visit some of the centers we have completed. They are state of the art. In fact, they are not in sync with the areas where they are in. You would find a highly rural area and find very sophisticated institution within that rural area is because we are not planning to keep them where they are. We want them to be advanced and be able to compete with any learner in any part of South Africa. And that is where we are heading to. So, and we invite you to equally make use of those centers. Those of you who are training providers, approach them, rent them from those who are operating them so that they become entities that the communities can benefit from and take ownership on. I want hands, colleagues. I want us to have a conversation. I don't see hands. Yes, number one. I want number two. Number two, I demand number three. I'm not moving, I want number three. You know, I'm worried when we speak and people don't pose questions because it means they might not have listened. But there's also a positive part. It means we are good storytellers of the story we came to tell. So you heard us very clear. Number three, in that order. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm Chantal from Skill Up Training. We're in Richards Bay and we've got one in Belito. My question about the skills development centers, how do we know as providers where the centers are, how we would go about sending our students there to help? How's it going to work? How are we going to get in contact to find that information? It is brilliant to have it out there because I do find most of our students, we have access that they come to us on Fridays and they're allowed to use our computer rooms. But how would I be able to know where that center is?
Thank you. Number two.
Thank you. Kaya, I must apologize. I don't mean to make this a dialogue, but you can well appreciate if you're asking for an opportunity for assistance, it's going to come from somebody who is a training provider that has worked with corporates, worked with rural, deep rural, non-infrastructure, and succeeded with graduating learners with disability from these areas, well known very well by Services SETA and TETA and a few other SETAs. The idea here is to have the executive open up their minds to the idea that there are people out here on the ground, private training providers, with as little infrastructure as we have, delivered excellence to persons with disability and unemployed youth in the rural areas on their doorstep. They didn't need to go to a campus 100 miles away. And we need the development to happen now. And I think you can understand my frustration when I sit here today and I listen to these lovely presentations that you've given, because way back in 2003, from then till now, Services SETA in particular has taken up the luxury of reinventing itself time and time again, when, as you rightly pointed out, your mandate was to get development to the people in a continuous forum, not hinge upon whether Kaya stands up front or whether Kaya had a predecessor that did or did not deliver. It is sad for developmentalists like myself who are constantly in the rural areas and see non-delivery, pathetic infrastructure. We've just completed a project in the Zululand area. And I remember years ago, in 2007, when the President signed the UN Convention for access for persons with disability, every municipality and every municipal building was supposed to have free Wi-Fi for the community. I can assure you, it might be there, but it is for the employees, not for the people of the community. When we finish our learnerships and complete our learnerships, we make use of municipal infrastructure, like the few PCs that are working within the libraries within Pongola and Ngoma. So, reinventing infrastructure that already exists is frustrating because it holds us back from delivering to our communities. And I wish the SETA would understand that on the ground. I am not just talking, sitting here with a tie, and you assume that I have not been in the most rural of our areas in South Africa. I love where your aspirations are going. I really do. But I've heard it before. And I am so old, I think I'm going to die before I see any success on any significant level in community development. So I wouldn't interrupt the session anymore. I just needed to explain where I'm coming from. And please, I'm an open book. As a person, call on us to give you ground level solutions. One other aspect, there's a lot of talk of partnerships, and I think we chatted outside a little while ago regarding working with business. I think apart from working with business, in moving forward with a new plan that works differently, rather than just talk the talk, please, if you could affect, as Services SETA, my mother SETA, if you could please operationalize inter-SETA work and commitments and collaborations together with our business communities. Because you can't be an island. You can't be that egotistical to think as Services SETA you can provide what you need to provide and address NSD 2030. Thank you.
Very much. Number 3.
I don't even know what to say because it's already extended what I wanted to say. Shush, why is it so loud? Amplification. All right. Mr. Sbusiso, I really share the same sentiments as the previous speaker because I also identify as a humanitarian and we do the grass work. And as per your answer, I just held back when Babkaya said there was supposed to be a hand. My question is, the answer you gave me was so higher education centric. It's already for the haves, all right? So here's the 15-year-old who lives in the Dibra area, living with a disability, already vulnerable and marginalized already, and they are not enrolled at any TVET college. What do they then do? Because your proposition and your solution as Services SETA was very centric on higher education. Also, I would also like to extend in terms of social inclusion. We can't really in this day and age be tiptoeing around social inclusion. There should be parity. You can't be telling me that we need to capacitate your employees. People who were employed last year and capacitated within the 2021 to 2022 budget, there still be 24%. That's the number that I saw. Then there was 11% on CPOs. Yet people with the core critical issues come to us, come to plead at our mercy. Yet we can't even do anything because we don't have the relevant budget. But the only thing we can offer them is the skills. We can also try to capacitate them. How do we do that if we don't have the support, the financial support? In as much as you say it's important to sort of extend capacitation on your employers rather, it's also important, employees and employers simultaneously, yeah. It's also important to also retrace and look back with community-based organizations, the importance of having them, because these people with issues, as Ubaba had said, they come to us. We are the first people they cry out to whatever issue they are facing. So also we really plead that the youth interventions programs must be on par with everyone, every young person living in South Africa, not only in a context of higher education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe by way of responding, I would start with the first question. All our centers are either operated by a TVET college, which is nearby, or a community education training college, CET, the previously known as ABET institutions. And they are the ones you should be in contact with, form partnerships around access to those things, even programs that you can run in those areas. We really invite you to do that. But for specific ones, I don't think it will help you if I mention them now because I know them off my calf. I built them, so I can tell you which ones are there. But our annual report would have a list of those fully. And our details are there. Let's have a conversation around making them working. We don't want you to feel frustrated when you talk to us. In fact, we want you to always remain encouraged to call us to order, to remind us of our commitments to you as an organization. That's how a country is built. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma made a point once when she was still Minister of Home Affairs, but she was addressing a different meeting. And she said, one of the positive things about this service delivery protest, you'll remember in the country there was an era we had a lot of service delivery protests in comparison to now. People would barricade roads, ban things, and say, we demand houses, we demand this. She said, this which you see is not as a result of absence of delivery, but it talks to the frustration on the pace of delivery and the anxiety that we might not get it. So they see it's happening, but it's not coming to us. So let's draw attention to us through this particular action. There's a businessman who passed on in the Eastern Cape a few months ago, Ngubelanga. If you drive from Aidukwa towards Butterworth, there were boards he had put up saying, Asimanga khulumente siyaqhuba. Yiza uzosijoyina. Whilst we're waiting for delivery, we are not folding arms. We are doing that which we think we need, but come and join us. Now, we said we are living in a democratic society. We can't fold arms and get tired of complaining and say there's nothing that can be done. It is these continued discussions that will forever channel our thinking, bring these things to the focus that are a serious pain in our society, so that when we plan, all of us are reminded, do you remember in the in the stakeholder engagement in KZN, these issues are pertinent. We need to factor them in our planning. It pained me, a year ago, I watched on the news a community in Limpopo around a Venda village. They had come together to build an access road to their village. You know what pained me there? I thought to myself, this community can no longer get tired anymore, can no longer get angry anymore. They are tired of insulting anyone. They've accepted help is not coming. Let's do it ourselves. Now, if we are government and we see those for whom we are responsible behaving in that way, we should be really worried. That is why we are coming here, and we are glad that you still have a conversation with us, that there are these areas you want us to engage. And I want to invite you to engage Mr. Spengane, because he is responsible for our strategic partnerships and collaborations. So that let's have a conversation to say, how can we create a partnership through your support and facilitation and network with private business to drive, because rural development remains high on our agenda. So we can't afford to miss an opportunity that helps us to drive that agenda. The support and assistance of people with disability is high on our agenda. In a small village called Ngeleni in the Eastern Cape, we came across a cooperative of people living with disabilities. And when the board visited there, it was for another purpose. But they came across this co-op and they were involved in a chicken development project which was ran in a very shabby state of building. And the board said, before we even talk about what these people say they want, can we first intervene here? We can't allow our people who are doing something about themselves, but in this state. And I invite you, when any of you is in Tata, just find out when Ngeleni is and go and see the project we've built there. A state-of-the-art community chicken development project with accommodation and suitable for people living with disabilities. The reality is that all of us who are tasked with this responsibility of delivering these services are doing it within the confines of a particular budget. We have levy payers. We also have non-levy payers who are our stakeholders. You saw at some slide, Sbusiso spoke of overcommitment. Those which we want to do are a plethora, but the resources from which we are drawing to make it happen are very limited. But you should continuously work with us in prioritizing and reprioritizing until we get the country where we want it to be. That is how development is undertaken. And I'm hopeful that we will get there one day. Number one, do I get number two? Gulosisi ulapage. Number one. Okay, I think this would be our last round for these hands, and then we move over to the next section of our program. Yebo sis.
Sanbonani. My name is Kolsile Masigane from Computer Training. Firstly, I would just want to get it clarity ukuthi, are we still going to touch base more on the system stabilization? Or bese siqedile ngayo so that I can ask the question, or you still going to have more depth into stable system stabilization?
And ask your question, sis.
Okay, no, I just wanted to hear first what you're going to say about it, because we have a challenge with the system. It's really taking us back to the old age. So I'm hoping that one day you can actually improve the system of services SETA, especially the LMIS system is very poor. It is giving us problems. We had to find ourselves sitting with a project not closed for over a year because of the system. That's the first thing. And the second thing is with regards to the centers that you've mentioned, may we request that at the end of this presentation, when you are emailing us the proposals or the presentation, please include the list of the centers, where they are, how do we go about accessing them, and the mobile track as well. Please include that on that report back to us, because if you're taking us back to the annual one, I don't think everybody has actually had a chance to go that deep into the annual, but because now we know, can I request, because we actually do have a problem when we do and go and work out in the deep rural areas. So just include that list, and then how we go about accessing it, I think will be fine. Thank you.
Siyabonga. Thank you very much. Who's going to respond to the LMIS question? Mr. Dladla?
Thank you, Sis Kul. With regards to our LMIS challenge, it is a fact. We have challenges with LMIS. I'm not going to try and make it sound rosy. So what we've identified with LMIS, we have about 8 modules on the system, which cuts across the work that we do. What we've been doing over the last year is trying to upgrade and update the system itself so that we can better serve in terms of application processes. It is part of the projects that we are running now. One, first to stabilize the program so that it's continuously up, and that then when you want to access it, you have a challenge that you can't get it onto the platform itself. The second is to make it easier to use from a SDP point of view, because if you remember, the process with LMIS is quite long, because you have to first create your profile, and then I must go back and review your profile. Then I come back and say to you, I've reviewed your profile. Please load your project now. You load your project. I must go back and review what you've loaded. I come back to you, I say remediate, and then you remediate, and then I must go back and review. Then we approve. Once you've approved, then I say, no, let's go back onto now the contracting side, then the project starts. So that's the system and business process matter that I was talking about earlier. How do we remove these sort of gaps in between that delay us starting on the project? That is a current project that is active, just call. The second part of that, once we've got it done, is to integrate it to the finance part of it and the contracting part, so that once you've done your part, automatically on our side, the contract is loaded, it comes to you for you to sign. It informs finance for you then to also start on the process of the working in terms of your first tranche for your project. So if we, once we've done that alignment and we've cleaned all these glitches and the gaps in between, we will then have a system that will then better serve on what we want to achieve. It is an ongoing process. We are anticipating to finalize the LMIS project by March, and then the integration project will then be the part of it. March now, date 2023, on baselining the LMIS so that it's an efficient and fluent system. It is a mammoth task, and because it's a live system, we always work on the information that we receive from yourselves as stakeholders to then also give us an indication of where we are. But for any challenge, we do have that designated help desk, and the colleagues do assist. If you have a challenge with getting in assistance from there as well, we will speak outside on who you can escalate to so that we can assist. And anyone else who's got LMIS challenges, we can have a conversation when we go on lunch so that I can give you other channels to escalate to beyond the help desk. I hope I've answered you, Sister. Sure.
This man insists on getting feedback before he steps down. He wants to know if he's covered you. But thank you very much. I will repeat this many a times. Colleagues, the reason why we came is because we want you to identify with us, to know us, and to know how to get hold of us. It's not enough to visit our website. You will get frustrations. So let's take advantage of this platform that is created, where now you have an opportunity to can engage a person with whom you've met, who's responsible for a particular area of your interest, and create an ongoing engagement beyond that. That's how processes are built. We are now going to move over to the second part of our program, which is the second and the last, which is the last one. I'm going to invite to the podium Ms. Mamabele Motla, who would come and give us an overview of the session we are going to deal with. Like I said earlier on, it's dealing with our occupational qualifications framework. Without wasting time, Ms. Motla, please join me in the podium.
Good day, our honorable stakeholders, to our accounting authority members, and the colleagues from the SETA, stakeholders that have joined us online. We appreciate your presence, and we do apologize for the inconvenience on our technical glitches earlier on. To introduce this discussion, it actually became easier. My colleagues earlier on, they have shared the outcomes, the 8 outcomes of the NSDP 2030. And if all the attendees could actually note that 3 of the outcomes, they're talking about workplace and occupational directed programs. And one will then say, if the emphasis of the NSDP 2030 is emphasizing occupationally directed programs, what have we done as a SETA to prepare for that? And we know very well that this year is our 3rd year of the implementation of the NSDP 2030, meaning that it's very important for us to then say, how far are we to transition from legacy to occupational? And program director, together with EM Corporate Services, they emphasize the importance of partnership and collaboration. And we will actually engage why we need that. Outcome 1 says to us, we need to identify and produce occupations that are in high demand. And we'll not do that if we don't develop qualifications that will address the occupations that are in high demand. Outcome 3 then says to us, increase the access to those occupations. To increase access as a SETA, we are saying we need to make sure that that of which is in demand, there is capacity to supply it. And capacity, we mean public and private capacity. Our two colleagues that were actually raising questions earlier on, they kept on saying rural development, our learners can't access TVET colleges, they can't find your offerings, they cannot be trained because of there is no that capacity in our public institutes. Capacity is not only limited to your private capacity. You do have to build capacity even in the public space, public institute space. From our capacity, we also say, when we transition into occupational qualification, it's not only about the theoretical element. Mr. Spengani, in his opening, he spoke about workplace, the importance of the curriculum of the occupational qualifications. So as a SETA, we are saying, in the transitioning of the occupation into occupational qualifications, we need the employer. We need the key role players in the sector. We are talking about an industry kind of interventions. So that of which that we develop, we need to make sure that it's in demand from an industry point of view. That of which that we supply, we need to make sure that there is a demand. So it is actually of an advantage that we are in this position. As SETAs, we are fortunate because of the NSDP outcomes were very clear to position SETAs in making sure that we see the linkage between education and workplace. We will not be successful as SETAs to implement the occupational qualifications without the public and private providers and without the employers, because we need to see that linkage. In the presentation by my colleague, Mr. Dlamini, he'll be sharing with the stakeholders how much we have done as a SETA. We are here to share with you our developments in terms of the arrangements in ensuring that we can transition with all of our key role players. So how far are we as well, from a development point of view and from the capacity to supply? As I said, our capacity talks about the experts, the providers, your assessors and moderators. What are we doing in ensuring that we will transition together? And we will also share with you how we are planning to phase in the transitioning process. This is phase one of the NSDP 2030. The current administration, which is our accounting authority term, until 24-25 financial year. And it is fortunate for them because of they are administrating this organization as it's transitioning out of the legacy and they are now need to move into occupational. We've got 2 remaining financial years, which is 23-24 and 24-25 financial year. After that, you will not find your traditional qualifications to implement. So we are calling into our stakeholders to say, as we are discussing this, as we are engaging, we need you. Only in partnership with you will be successful as we transition from legacy to traditional. So Mr. Dlamini, he will be sharing with you our progress as a development quality partner. How far have we progressed into the realignment and actually developing the new qualifications that may have not been there. And those were informed by the industry demands. He will also share with the stakeholders the progress that we've made as an assessment quality partner, your traditional quality assurance function as a SETA. And the implications, how are you affected as an SDP, as an employer, as a subject matter expert, and as learners? How will they be affected by this big elephant in the room? And the process for the accreditation, as I indicated, our strategy on how we are planning to phase in from traditional into occupational. Then we will do a Q&A session. It is for that reason that our program director requested that we have a break so that when we engage on this matter, we actually give it the same attention like we did in the organizational overview. So we are saying as a SETA, we don't know the how, It is a new space for us. We actually will appreciate your inputs, your engagements as we prepare for this new way of facilitating skills development. On that note, I will request our senior manager, Mr. Paul Dlamini, to come and now take the stakeholders through our transitional arrangements and how far are we. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you so much, stakeholders.
Thanks, Naomi. Good day, stakeholders. Good day, Accounting Authority. My colleagues and executives. As we are talking about transitional arrangements and their implications, I just want to say, in terms of implications, we had invited the QSTO to be part of the session. Unfortunately, they couldn't make it. However, they gracefully provided us with their accreditation process. Of course, my DQP partner from the SETA also could not make it. So what are the implications of that? The implications are that you are stuck with me. I need to then take you through the transitional arrangements, the AQP, the DQP, and of course, the QSTO accreditation process. I would then have to take you through our phase-in approach. There was a ministerial determination. Those who have been around for some time, especially as SDPs, would know that this occupational qualification transition has been coming, and every time when the qualifications are about to expire, they would be extended. However, this time, the minister came with a ministerial determination which spoke to historical qualifications. What are the implications in terms of that? The current legacy qualifications or historical qualifications are expiring next year, 30 June 2023. That would have, of course, ramifications in terms of implementation. The last date of learners enrolling on legacy qualifications is 30 June 2024. That also has its own implications. Also, it has an opportunity for those providers who will take the first mover advantage, realizing that SETAs have a mandate to deliver, and without the capacity of supply, we might not be in a position to deliver. So it's important that whatever you're doing, you actually position yourself to take advantage of this transitional arrangement. As you might know, the nearer we go to this date, last date of learner enrollment, we are going to have an influx of applications for new accreditation. The wise thing to do is to start going through the various listed qualifications, looking at which qualifications have been realigned from your legacy qualifications to occupational qualifications. The last date of achievements. Now, those learners that you would have indentured in your system or enrolled would be 30 June 2027. So, whatever number of learners you have, you must make sure that by this date, these learners exit. Let's talk the DQP. The qualifications are developed by a development quality partner with communities of expert practitioner. There's usually a facilitator, which we call a QDF, which is a qualification development facilitator, who guides the experts or the subject matter experts on the development of the qualification. Let's talk what's an occupational qualification. It means a qualification associated with a trade or occupation or profession resulting from work-based learning and consisting of knowledge, practical and work experience components as defined by the Skills Development Act. Part qualification means an assessed unit of learning with a defined outcome that is or will be registered as part of a qualification on the NQF. Now you'll realize that currently on the NQF, we were having qualifications listed, but we will now be having also part qualifications listed. Skills program means a skills program that is occupationally based and when completed will constitute or contribute a credit towards a qualification registered on the NQF. Now, if you look at the definitions, and I'm also going to talk to how the minister has revoked the previous occupational qualifications sub-framework and introduced last year, around about this time, on the 29th of October, the new occupational qualification sub-framework. And that framework is underpinned by an occupational qualification sub-framework policy. If you go through the policy itself, it has various descriptions of what a qualification is, of what a part qualification is, and of what a skills program is. However, when this definition takes place, reading the definition itself, you might have a difficulty distinguishing between a skills program and a part qualification because both would contribute towards a full qualification. We've then decided to juxtapose the various qualifications, qualification, part qualification, skills program, and from that extract what we would call differentiating features. If you look at the presentation, a qualification must have a minimum of 120 credits. A part qualification must have less than 120 credits. And a skills program must have a minimum of 8 credits. Now, if you look at the definition, could you end up with a qualification and a part qualification more or less with the same number of credits? Possibly. Because a part qualification would have less than 120 credits, but we don't say what the maximum number of credits is. A minimum of 8 credits for a skills program, which is a ceiling, meaning that it could be 8 or more, which again could be a part qualification. So what are the differentiating features? Let's look at integrated assessments. That's where we start to see the difference. With integrated assessments, there is an external integrated summative assessments. Now, with occupational qualifications, that's one of the defining features. As you will see, a learner will have to sit for an external integrated summative assessments, just like your matriculants do. The DQP and the AQP will develop the assessment instruments. They will determine when the assessments will take place, similar to how Matric does. We will also ensure that as a DQP, we have frequency of assessments. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I just need to indicate now what a part qualification is. Remember, it has less than 120 credits. However, the assessment thereof is also centralized. So a learner would attain a part qualification by sitting for an assessment, an integrated, external integrated summative assessment. Skills program, that's the difference. The assessment itself is decentralized. However, it has to be a final integrated summative assessment at the provider side. What do we mean by that? The expectation is that even though it's at the provider side, it will have to be a supervised assessment. International comparability. As you know, our qualifications are actually compared to other qualifications offered elsewhere. That is applicable to your qualification. It is applicable to your part qualification. Of course, it is not applicable to your skills program. Now, that is what I felt must be extracted as a differentiating feature between the various types of qualifications that we are having. We felt it is important to talk to the qualification type. I've indicated that the minister then revoked the existing occupational qualifications framework somewhere in October last year, and then came up with a new one. But what are the primary imports of this new occupational qualification sub-framework? Firstly, the nomenclature. You must bear in mind that one of the principles of the NQF has to do with articulation horizontally, vertically within a sub-framework, but also the expectation is that there must be period of esteem. Let's explain what we mean by that. When you have an occupational qualification from the occupational qualifications framework, you would refer to it as a higher occupational certificate. The same applies to an occupational qualification from a higher education sub-qualification framework. It will have to have the same naming convention. It will have to have the same esteem. The only difference would be your sub-framework. Now, how do you ensure that you have this cognitive parity? You look at your level descriptors. Now, those erudite in these areas will tell you that as you go up on the NQF level or spiral, the level of complexity of the qualification differs. So you increase the level of complexity. So across the sub-frameworks, you will then have any qualification at a specific level having the same level of complexity. So if you have this qualification, a certificate at NQF level 7, whether it's from an occupational qualification framework, whether it's from a higher education qualification framework, it will have the same title. It will be an advanced occupational certificate if it's at level 6. It would be an advanced occupational diploma if it's at NQF level 7. It will be a specialized occupational diploma at NQF level 8. Articulation. There is also an intention to make sure that learners can move vertically upwards, where you drag your credits to the next qualification. You can move horizontally across within the SIPE framework and carry those credits. That is underpinned by the credit accumulation transfer policy. And I'm asking providers just to note those policies if you are not aware of them, and just go and read the policies. Of course, the most difficult part of this spirit of esteem is the articulation across the sub-frameworks. The articulation across the various sub-frameworks, both horizontally and diagonally. The intention is that if you have the occupational qualification, you must be in a position to also carry your credits towards a higher education sub-framework qualification. Now, I'm going to digress a bit, not a lot, Program Director. I just want to highlight what we are doing currently. We've approached one of the leading academic institutions to offer one of our qualifications. And it's not because we favor the institution. It's not necessarily that it's a high esteem type of institution. It's from a practical point of view. One of our qualifications is embalmer. Now, if you look at the embalmer qualification, where else would you better find infrastructure to deal with it? Either than a medical institution that has the lab for the practical component, that has the subject matter experts in terms of the chemicals that should be used, the concentration of chemicals, the level of chemicals to be used. And of course, the institution might have these two, but it does not have the workplace component. Here now, you are seeing the opportunities of partnership with the institution. We do expect that some of our funeral undertakers would be in a position to offer some of these qualifications, but due to infrastructure issues, may need to engage an institution or an academic institution for this purpose. Can you see that incidentally, it's sheer coincidence that in the process you would be embedding the parity of esteem, because the intention is to get the institution to be accredited on the occupational qualification sub-framework, going outside its sub-framework. Now, we've had engagements where the qualification was unpacked. The feeling is that the qualification is a bit pegged at a high level. Of course, we've also identified that there are now two contextual workplaces. In preparing or embalming, you would have to decide whether you're embalming for academic and research purposes, because then your approach would be different. Again, would you be preparing for our normal burial activities, in which case maybe the qualification could be pegged at too high a level. And as we know, in our environment, the requirement to at least embalm depends on how brave you are. We are looking at a situation where some of our industries would be professionalized. Now, in the revision, when we review the occupational qualification, we're hoping that some of these subject matter experts from academia will come and be part of the CEPs. Again, the practicality of parity of esteem is there. Learners would be trained by an academic institution but have an occupational qualification. They'll be trained by our private SDP but go to an academic institution for their practical component. And who knows, maybe even go again to an academic institution for assessments, because our providers might not have the capacity to be an assessment center. I digressed a bit, but I think it was important to demonstrate parity of esteem, to demonstrate the primary imports of the occupational qualification sub-framework policy. In fact, this presentation is quite short in a sense that I'm now at a point where I must give you the development status of our qualification. It was quite a lengthy presentation because we listed the qualifications themselves, but we decided that no, let's not do that to our stakeholders. What we will do is to give you the status and give you a link where you will go and see the various occupational qualifications. We've got 31 registered occupational qualifications. We've got 5 skills programs registered. We've got qualifications approved by SAQA for registration, which then have to go through the process and be registered. That is 2. We have qualifications resubmitted to SAQA after remediation. Now, this remediation was occasioned by this very ministerial determination, where we had to revise some of the qualifications that were developed to make sure that we include the requirements of the occupational sub-framework, qualification sub-framework policy. Let's talk our AQP. We've been delegated as an assessment quality partner for qualifications that fall under our sector, that is the services sector. We have been delegated this function by the QSTO in terms of Section 26 of the Skills Development Act. The criteria for approval of an AQP is as follows, because even a professional body could be an AQP. You must be recommended by the relevant development quality partner. So your community of expert practitioners sitting developing a qualification can recommend you to be an assessment quality partner. You must have access to practitioners and other human resources to perform specified AQP functions. And of course, we know that SETAs in the various sectors would have access to assessment practitioners. And of course, your subject matter experts. You must have research capacity. Under our strategic planning unit, we also conduct research. You must have the necessary financial resources. I'm going to skip the next one. And have a system in place to detect and address irregularities. Delegated functions of an AQP. You must recommend external assessment specification documents for approval by the QSTO. Now we sign what we call an assessment specification addendum. What is that? It is really a blueprint of all the assessments that would be taking place. As we've already indicated that with occupational qualifications, your route to a qualification would have to be an external integrated summative assessment. So the AQP and the DQP would have to come with assessment specification. It is a grade which says these are the outcomes. These outcomes would be assessed this way. This method of assessment would be used. The weighting in terms of determining competency will be such and such. We must also develop and maintain a national data bank of instruments for external assessments. Similarly to Umalusi, who would sit and draft all your assessments for matriculants. We must publish exemplars for external assessments. We must recommend to the QSTO the accreditation and withdrawal of accreditation of assessment centers. The same applies to accreditation of skills development providers. Of course, when the process started, QSTO said, you will go out and evaluate assessment center accreditation. You would evaluate assessment centers and recommend accreditation. Now, you would also then develop your assessment instruments. However, the position is that now we would also go out and evaluate SDPs for accreditation. Most importantly, we will coordinate and manage external assessment processes. That's the primary difference. How you would conduct assessments has differed now. It will be at an assessment center as opposed to at the provider site. As a provider, what you will do, you will assess learners. You will conduct what they call a final integrated summative assessment. It will have to be supervised. And by the way, even for legacy qualifications, that's an expectation that you must now conduct a FISA. Okay, we are also supposed to externally moderate. We have to recommend learners for certification. We have to report to the QSTO on its functions. And of course, in terms of our assessment instruments, provide a mechanism for RPL. So what are the implications for stakeholders? Let's start with SDPs. You know the qualifications will be expiring 30 June 2023. The services SETA has ceased accepting accreditation applications for historical qualifications. As of the 31st of August 2022, with the concurrence of the QSTO, we had to negotiate with QSTO as our principal. As you know, the process of applying for legacy qualification accreditations starts at the QSTO. The same applies anyway with occupational qualification, but they had to issue you with a letter of intent. We've seen that we've closed the system for applications. Notwithstanding that, we are aware that some stakeholders might have received their letters of intent or applied for their letters of intent before the deadline or on the deadline. We are willing up to the end of November to entertain those stakeholders. Again, stakeholders that have areas of remediation must try and make sure that before the end of November, you remediate. SDPs must identify occupational qualifications that have been developed or realigned from historical qualifications and align their material accordingly in order to apply for accreditation against occupational qualifications. Now, as an SDP, you can also apply to be an assessment center as long as you separate your personnel that you are using for training and the personnel that you are using for assessments. You can be both an SDP and an assessment center, or you can just be an SDP, or you can just be an assessment center. Implications for employers. Occupational qualifications are workplace-based, so employers would have to apply for workplace approval from the SETA to host learners. Of course, there's a criteria that we will use based on the qualification. Fortunately, unlike in trades, most of our qualifications need your generic office environment, so most of our providers might meet this requirement, employers. Again, employers must make sure that workplace mentors have the requisite occupation-specific competencies, because then you would need to take the learner through the workplace-based component of the qualification, and you would have to at least assess the learner or declare competency against those components of the qualifications that are applicable in the workplace. Implications for subject matter experts. You must identify occupational qualifications for which you meet the qualifications requirements. Now, we know that most of our SDPs have assessors and moderators who are registered constituently, but we are saying for occupational qualifications, please go and look at the curriculum document and make sure you meet the requirements as per the curriculum document. Of course, we are expected to keep a database of subject matter experts. So having looked at the curriculum document, finding that you meet the actual requirements, please, you would approach us for registration. We expect SMEs to build capacity. Now, stakeholders know that as a services SETA, in some instances, we would, of course, run skills programs for assessors, moderators. Currently, we are trying to identify realigned part qualifications or skills program. In our discussion with one of our fellow quality practitioners, that is the ETDP SETA, they've indicated that they've developed the assessment practitioner qualification. QSTO has indicated that there is also a learner development practitioner qualification. ETDP SETA has indicated that for purposes of occupational qualifications, they are looking at developing either a skills program or a part qualification for moderation. So that's where we are. We do want our stakeholders to be capacitated for the new landscape. The QSTO enjoins us to group our stakeholders so that they can be capacitated through these processes. But we as a SETA, without making promises, we will look at what would be appropriate at the time and see how we can intervene. Implications for learners. Learners must undertake an external integrated summative assessment and be deemed competent to acquire an occupational certificate. So it's not only going to be at the provider level, And remember, the certificate will be issued by the QSTO. It will have the QSTO logo. Statements of results acquired through internal summative assessment, your final integrated summative assessment or RPL at the skills development provider site would be your entry into an ASA. So as providers, you will still train learners, assess learners formatively, culminating in your summative integrated assessment, that is your final integrated summative assessment, which will be supervised. Once they are deemed competent, that would be their entry into the ASA. Learner registration for an ASA, it could either be through your provider, or the learner can approach an assessment center directly. Program director, can I continue? As indicated, the QSTO could not make it. Hopefully they can make it to our Gauteng roadshow. However, if there are questions pertaining to the QSTO process that we cannot deal with, we will capture that and we will put the responses on our website. However, we are hoping that they'll join us in Gauteng. The QSTO process is as follows. Let's start with the outline. This presentation deals with the types of accreditation offered by the QSTO, the accreditation process for occupational qualifications, part qualifications, and skills programs. The links for applications of different QSTO accreditation services, and you will see when you are applying for your accreditation, they want you to use the correct link. It will talk to the accreditation challenges. Of course, we will have questions and answer sessions. They will accredit you for occupational qualifications, part qualifications, and skills program. Historical qualifications, you use your letters of intent, and depending on SETAs, whether they still accept the processing of legacy qualifications, you will still get a letter from them, but the letter will indicate that a SETA may refuse to continue with the accreditation. I just also need to say, as services SETA, we have looked, I'm talking now legacy before I move on, we have looked at, on a monthly basis, the demand side and the supply side from our colleagues in terms of evaluating the accreditation applications. And as a SETA that deals with generic qualifications, most of providers from different sectors also apply for our accreditation. On a month-to-month basis, we've always had in excess of 700 or so qualifications still to be evaluated. What the SETA has then done, we've looked at acquiring services that would assist us to deal with all the outstanding occupational qualifications applications. Our intention is to make sure that come the end of the financial year, we have expunged all the applications. So please bear with us. If there hasn't been movement, there will be a movement. We have put a mechanism in place to make sure that we fast track the evaluation of those applications. Back to the QSTO presentation. So here's the process. Applicants complete an online application form. The QSTO sends a link to applicants to upload their compliance documents. We will look at the compliance documents. The applicant upload compliance documents within the prescribed time frame. What are the compliance documents? Your occupational health and safety audit report, proof of ownership or lease agreement, facilitators, CVs, qualifications, ID copy, proof of financial stability. Somewhere they said, or any other document. We are trying to find out what would be the other document that would stand as proof of financial stability. The tax compliance status, the CIPC registration documents. These are ordinarily your typical entity documents. Most importantly, you must have an MOU or an SLA with a workplace where learners will get workplace exposure. That's one primary difference also, that as a provider, you must now start to have strategic partnership with your employers. Urge employers to apply for workplace approval. Number 8, your learning material must be aligned to the learning material matrix. Your curriculum document has the necessary information. Now, we are hoping that at some point, as a services SETA, to increase efficiency, since the curriculum is standard across for various qualifications, we may make this function easy for providers, where we ourselves will populate the learning material metrics, and all you have to do is just to ensure that you align the material to the outcomes of the qualification or to the curriculum. So you would indicate which aspect of the curriculum is found in your documents and where. Providers who've dealt with the alignment matrix would know what we're talking about. What also we intend doing whilst at this, post these sessions, we would want to go to province by province, have focused engagements now with skills development providers, where we are not only taking you through the process, we also take you through the documentation that you'll have to fill up, to submit, just to aid the process. Of course, we have a vested interest in having providers that are accredited for occupational qualifications, because post-June 2024, we are not going to be in a position to deliver on our mandate if we don't have skills development providers. Accreditation process continued. Once you've submitted your documents, there'll be a desktop evaluation. They'll evaluate your uploaded compliance document. They'll generate a desktop evaluation report. They will draft a site visit schedule for approval. Of course, in most cases, they would also give us a list of providers that have applied for accreditation. Currently, very few providers are applying for occupational qualifications, save for project management. So I think it's time after this that providers look at the qualifications, which qualifications have been realigned to occupational qualifications, and start engaging with the process. An SME will be appointed Now, an SME might be appointed from the services SETA or by the QSTO. However, we are expected to go on site and do the actual site visit. It could be physical or virtual. A site visit report will be generated. It will be handed to the QSTO where we recommend accreditation. The accreditation committee will either approve or decline. It's more like a ratification committee of the recommendations that would have come from subject matter experts who conducted the evaluation. Of course, there's an appeals process. You can appeal. I think there'll be a time frame within which you can appeal. It is important that stakeholders also look at the accreditation policy from the QSTO for occupational qualifications. There are time frames embedded there. For instance, if you are given areas of remediation, you'll have 10 days from the date when you receive the actual application, the actual report to remediate, failing which you'll have to start afresh. Links for applications. There's a link for a letter of intent, and of course we are no longer dealing with that. There's a link for skills development provider, occupational qualification and part qualifications if you want to apply for that. There's a separate link for skills program. And then there's a link for N4 and N6 programs, which of course currently we are not dealing with. And if you want to be an assessment center, either for a trade or for an occupational qualification, there's also a link. Learner enrollments, crucial. For occupational qualifications, you must enroll learners within 21 days of starting your training. Our current providers enroll learners at the point of exit. Now, if you read the assessment policy, it's explicit. The QCTO will reject any applications for now an ASA if you did not enroll learners at the beginning. So it's important. For a skills program, you need to enroll learners within 5 days of starting your training. So they indicate that essentially the learner enrollment happens at 2 phases. When you start your training, then learners would be enrolled at an assessment center where they have to sit for an assessment. And of course, that ensures that as an AQP or even the QSTO itself visits the assessment center, determines the readiness of the assessment center to conduct assessments. Accreditation challenges as per the QSTO, use of appropriate application links. People go and apply for assessment center accreditation when they are actually applying for, they use the wrong link, SDP accreditation. So it is very, very important that our stakeholders take note of this to save yourself time. Use the correct link for whichever accreditation you are seeking. They are not in favor of consultants. So if an evaluation has to take place, please make sure that as the SDP, you are there. Also, there's non-responsiveness of SDPs once they've applied, and the next step should follow, the SDP disappears or is silent. They are mentioning that their processes are not SETA processes. Of course, in one of the sessions I attended, they indicated that as a SETA, you will apply for an extension of scope if you were accredited. Now, for occupational qualifications, if you are a first-time applicant, whether you are accredited or not, it is not an extension of scope, it's a new application altogether. SDPs do not familiarize themselves with approved QST or accreditation policies and processes. And as indicated, we are requesting stakeholders to check on the accreditation processes, policy, the assessment policy, the e-learning and assessment policy, because all the questions you might be asking for assessments when it comes to occupational qualifications are embedded in that policies. You must make sure that you look at the credit accumulation policy, which I spoke to when I spoke about the parity of esteem. It is important that you look at the credit accumulation transfer policy as well. That is it in as far as the accreditation process is concerned. Can I go on, Mr. Bly? I think it's going to be short. We're looking at specific occupational qualifications for a phase-in, and these are the list of occupational qualifications. I'm not going to read through them. This has been informed by the readiness to implement on our side. Of course, we are aware that there's a paucity of providers. And if you look at these qualifications, most of them are new. We also want to incentivize providers to play in this space, but really primarily, we're also looking at our readiness in terms of learnership registration. As we are aware, we implement via learnerships. Funding of occupational qualifications. Of course, I'm taking into account that you'll be receiving this presentation, hence I'm not going to read each and every qualification there. The same applies to the various statuses of qualifications. You can simply go to the link and check those qualifications. The services SETA will be funding the cost of occupational qualifications in implementation, including the ASA. Remember now, we have an external integrated assessment taking place at an assessment center. So the assessment center would expect to be paid for the role. So we are looking at that. The funding structure will not change in the short term in terms of the other part of the application, of the qualifications. The ASA will be funded at a specific rate per component, including the cost of certification. The services SETA AQP will conduct external moderation, as it's normally the case. In the medium term, the services SETA will review the funding structure associated with the implementation of occupational qualifications. Now, that's why we are not going big currently. We want to see a number of things: our readiness to implement, whether the funding structure is sufficient and enabling to implement. Once that is determined, there'll probably be a review of the funding structure. I think I've come to the end of the presentation. And thank you for bearing with me. I know it's hot, and I had to go through the 3 presentations, but as indicated, talking implications, that was the implication. You were stuck with me as a presenter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prapol. Are these your notes? Rapon? Yeah. Thank you very much. That was indeed quite a long presentation, but very informative. And it's necessary that we at times sit and absorb these presentations. I know it's a lot for a first session, but as indicated, it's opening a conversation for a discussion. I'm going to invite you now to indicate where you have questions around these presentations. And I think, colleagues, if you listened attentively, you understand that some are due to external factors. By external factors, I mean it's due to factors not of our own making. We also have to adapt to the changes. And then let's all create that understanding to say, what is it that is changing? How is it affecting me? How do I position myself to be in response to these changes? I will see by show of hands, as we've been doing. We'll take the first round. And I think this time we'll only go 2 rounds. The first round, the second round, you missed that one, you'll talk to us during lunch. Can I see 1? Do I have 2? 2? Do I have 3? 3? Do I have 4? Okay, let's take 3 the first round, and then we'll see how far we go the second round. Number 1.
Afternoon once more. Thank you for the wonderful session, sir. It was informative. But I'm worried about the assessment, the external one. I would like to get clarity in terms of if learners are from a far rural area and they have to undergo this external assessment. What steps will they be taken for them to get to that center, or how are you going to identify the center based on their location or area of rural area? Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2.
Hello, everybody. I'm Melissa from Custom Training Solutions, and thank you for that session. It was very informative. I just wanted clarity. So with the FISA, so the final integrated summative assessment, that's going to be at your site, am I right, at the training provider site? And if it is, it's supposed to be supervised. I wanted to know supervised by who? So is it a QCTO representative, or I'm just not sure who supervises? And then I also just wanted to find out, with the skills programs, is that a separate accreditation? So you're going to apply for accreditation for the occupational qualification. Then if we want to offer now a skills program also, is that now a completely separate application?
All right. Is
Okay,
that
thank
all?
you.
Thank you. Number 3.
Afternoon. My name is Ebenezer from UST College. My first question to Mr. Dlamini, I just wanted to get clarity in terms of the vertical move of the learners within the sub-framework. Whether does it also apply, for example, if a learner has done a qualification, maybe a learnership from level 2 and 3, and now they want to get accredited or credits to be able to move maybe with the same or similar qualification to a TVET college or to a, for example, DUT as we're here, because we get a lot of questions from learners when they do or when they undergo learnerships that what is the next move for them? Do they have to go and work, or can they also use the same qualification to get credits to move to maybe an N sub-framework or a national diploma? And my second question is that, as it has been mentioned that there'll be no more new accreditations with the previous historical framework, are we then now, as we are due for reaccreditation in 2023, supposed to go straight to the QC2O as it has been outlined, or are we still going to get the last 2023 to 2026? That's my last question. Thank you.
All right. You've got that rapport. Can I check, do we have online questions? Sizwe, can you please read them aloud so that we also allow Brapol to respond to those as he comes to the podium, please?
Thank you, Mr. Bly. Online, we have 3 hands from, I think we'll start with the first person who raised their hand. It will be Felicity Kent. Felicity, we are allowing your microphone and we are allowing your camera. If you can be so kind as to unmute and ask your question.
Qualifications. Very often. And we are talking about business administration level 3, business administration level 4. We're talking about new venture creation. We're talking about management at level 3. I want to know, what is the SETA doing with those legacy qualifications and how are you turning them into occupational qualifications? Because at the moment, there is only a business administration at level 5 and it is far too high for the people, the target, who actually perform these tasks. What is the future for the SETA on those kind of generic qualifications? That's my first question. Excuse me. My second question, and now it's eluded me as well. I cannot remember what my second question was. Sorry. Let's just start with that one.
Sorry, Felicity, if you can just be so kind as to just repeat your first question for us. I think due to network issues, we couldn't hear your first question.
The first question is, what is the SETA doing about the generic legacy qualifications? How are you turning them into occupational qualifications? Because there is nothing available at the moment and the SETA needs to be able to inform us what their process is or what they think of doing in the future. And I'm talking about business admin level 3, level 4, new venture creation, management, those generic type of programs, which there are no occupations or very few occupations listed for them.
Thank you so much, Felicity. Can we just afford Mr. Dlamini the opportunity to answer the questions and then we will come back to the online questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll start with Felicity's question. Thank you for that question. It is important to note that the services SETA does not go out and develop qualifications on its own. It's informed by research. It's informed by subject matter experts who come and say, this is the qualification that we want you to develop as occupational qualifications. So in as far as the development of occupational qualifications is concerned, that is informed by stakeholders. But it is important to mention the fact that we have been expected to indicate the old qualifications or legacy qualifications and realigned qualifications and which ones we still need to realign. Now, in the development or realignment of qualification, that is also informed by stakeholders. what was initially a low qualification might be pegged at a higher NQF level. So I just want to plead with stakeholders to make sure that they participate in the development of these qualifications, especially as industries, as providers, because you look at communities of expert practitioners and it covers everybody who's an expert and who has interest in that specific qualification. So in short, Felicity, these qualifications were developed because it's what the industry said we want. The issue of assessments, especially in rural areas, we've had a discussion where we indicated that the SETA has developed skill centers. However, we accredit providers. As a provider, if you identify that there's a need, you may need to check if you can apply to be an assessment center. All you have to make sure is in place is the conducive environment for assessments. You must make sure that you have the relevant subject matter experts, your assessors and moderators. We expect providers to apply to be assessment centers. That's another opportunity. We've indicated that you can be both an assessment center and an SDP. So please, where you identify there's a need, help us with the capacity of supply. The fees are supervised by who? It will be supervised by the provider. However, the SETA or the QSTO might come in and monitor the assessments. The difference is that before we only looked at your POEs. Now there's a need for learners to sit in a supervised environment where they'll undergo assessments. Skills programs. Thanks also for that question. Unlike before, providers, in as far as the occupational qualification sub-framework is concerned, the development of skills programs will be informed again by the need. The skills program will have to be listed on the occupational qualification sub-framework. Specifically, there is a reconstruction and recovery development strategy. In developing the skills program, that will also be looked at. Is there a need? So, unlike before, where we as a services SETA in particular would permit providers to come up with a permutation of skills program where you have different unit standards, the occupational qualifications framework does not allow that. And of course, if you have identified the need, you will have to speak to our DQP, who will also subject it to the necessary processes before we recommend development to the QSTO. It might be easy to articulate horizontally within the sub-framework, depending whether the qualification is in the same field. I've indicated that currently that's our biggest challenge. Also in terms of articulating across the sub-frameworks. However, that is the objective of the NQF, the development of the occupational qualification sub-framework policy wants to concretize, if there is such a word, the actual articulation. Currently, it is difficult, but it is provided for in the policy, both your occupational sub-framework policy. It's also provided for in the credit accumulation transfer. I think so far I've covered the questions, unless, okay.
If you've got, thank you. For clarity, okay, with the skills programs, are you saying if you have the occupational qualification, okay, you've applied for accreditation and you have that, and you want to offer a skills program that maybe falls under that occupational qualification, then that one accreditation is fine? Are you saying that, or are you saying that you need to get another accreditation to offer skills programs?
You need to apply to be accredited for a skills program.
So for every separate skills program,
Yes,
you need to apply?
Remember, the skills program itself will be registered. So it will be like applying for an occupational qualification. The skills program will be registered.
Okay.
So we're not, the policy does not provide for a provider who has, say, a full qualification, for want of a better word, to say now I can chop and change the way we used to do, you know, with unit standards.
Yeah.
And take this component and that component and comprise a skills program. You must follow the development process of a skills program, which would be similar more or less to the development process of a part qualification or occupational qualification. And once registered, any provider can apply for that skills program. So it will be registered on the National Qualifications Framework.
Okay, all right, thank you. Sorry, just one more question. This is a bit separate. In terms of material, will the QCTO make any material available to providers? Because currently, with Services SETA, we got our material from SETA. So with QCTO, do we have to develop our own material?
Okay, we've noted your question. I just want us to go online, so that we've got about 4 or 5 questions for Mr. Dlamini to answer. We have a hand from Janine Topping. We will allow you to speak and also allow your camera. Janine Topping, please do come in. Okay, while Janine Topping is getting ready, we are going to ask for Mulebuheng Mufugeng. We have allowed your microphone and we have allowed your camera. Could you please just ask your question? All right, while the 2 colleagues are getting themselves ready, we do have some questions on the chats. So Janine Topping asked, kindly clarify if credits for skills programs will be uploaded onto the NLRD. Lydia Sibuhodi asks, hi, in terms of document submission, does SETA work on 3-month or 6-month certified documents? As I frequently experience a pushback, is there an updated document stipulating how long the documents must be certified? The same question again from Lydia is, frequently learners appearing on the LMIS state that they are unaware of the providers linked to them, as they had not existed on the system, and often candidates state they are not aware of the providers. Is there a form of declaration that a learner can fill in and submit to the SETA when they want to register and enable them to go through the program? And the last question from Janine Topping is, there are so many part qualifications that have not been registered as skills programs yet. Any update, please? Just before we give to Mr. Dlamini, can we just check if Janine is, Janine Topping is able to speak? Nothing from Janine, nothing from Muleboheng. I will allow Mr. Dlamini to answer questions. Thank you. Okay. Sure. No problem. So I'll ask the question again, and then Mr. Dlamini will answer. The first question was, kindly clarify if credits for skills programs will be uploaded onto the NLRD.
Unfortunately, I currently cannot answer that question, but we can find out if the skills program themselves would be listed on the NLRD. Some of the questions which we can't answer here, we will just put up on our website.
And then the question from Lydia, just summing it up, is there a form of declaration that a learner can fill in and submit to the SETA when registering?
Unfortunately, I don't understand what's the form of registering. Oh, the EM will answer that.
Okay, sorry. I see Muleboheng says she cannot chat. Your mic and camera have been enabled, ma'am. If you are unable, perhaps it is a device setting that you have. I do believe, Janine Topping, there are so many part qualifications that have not been registered as skills programs yet. Is there any update, please?
Part qualifications registered as skills programs. I must say, I don't know when those skills programs would be registered, and if they have followed the process that would have been set up by the DQP to be registered. If they do, they will be registered. I am aware that there are part qualifications also that have been recommended for registration but are not yet registered. We may just have to determine which skills programs, which part qualifications they are derived from that Mr. Ping is referring to, and we will list that on our website. But in terms of all the qualifications we have, the ones that we've recommended for registration, that is part and parcel of the status of our occupational qualifications. Providers can go to that link and check those qualifications. There are the various statuses.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dlamini. I'll ask the EM to just come and answer the question from Lydia. Thank you.
Thanks, thank you so much. I just want to touch the issue on the QC2O material, if it's going to be provided. If colleagues can just recall when Mr. Dlamini was presenting the QC2O process, they are emphasizing that the learning material must be aligned with the curriculum matrix. In the development of a qualification, it has a curriculum element. So it's for that reason that he was then saying, important is to go and understand the components of the qualification that has been developed. Therefore, the other one, it was from Felicity. She was talking about the alignment of the NVC Business Administration qualification. When we develop, Mr. Dlamini emphasized, when we develop a qualification is industry consultation. So what the industry identified is that we needed to develop a new venture creator skills program at level 2, is registered. The industry identified that we need to focus on entrepreneurship occupational qualification at level 3. We have registered that qualification. So is the alignment, realignment in line with that articulation of the NQF level that we are being informed by the industry? So it's very important that we've got good participation during the development phase of qualifications. And the last one was to then say, Mulebogeng is asking on whether you've got so much part qualifications that you have not aligned in terms of the skills programs. Are 3 deliverables: full qualifications, part qualifications, and a focused, well-packaged skills program. Doesn't mean that when you have a part qualification, it will result in a skills program. And as he was indicating, if you do not have a accreditation for a certain skills program, it doesn't mean that when you have a part qualification, you will deliver that skills program. And this is a new way, and then it's the very important element that our providers need to understand, that there's no more flexibility when it comes to skills program. Ministerial determination is clear, and skills program must be a build up to an occupational qualification, part or full, so that we make sure that we don't just roll out or provide skills programs that are not a build up to a certain occupation. The last one you're asking on whether, will the learner enrollment achievement, what is the process in terms of the registration? QC2O, it says to us, when you commence a project from a services SETA, you must enroll those learners immediately, within 5 days, 21 days. Yes. Skills program. If you don't do that, the reason there is Mulebogeng who's asking this question. The culture, you commence projects from the LMIS, we give you the commencement letter. You don't register those learners, you'll register them later when you exit them. So meaning that as a SETA, when we implement traditional qualifications, in the process of commencing the project, you'll be required as well. At the moment, we don't have forms, we don't have a process, but we know that it's a requirement by QC2O that you will enroll. So as part of our capacity to and our phasing approach, we will also consider that requirement and ensure that there's an alignment. Go away from a culture whereby providers will enroll learners at the end when they want us to conduct external moderation. So, but then I think I wanted to request that due to the fact that this is a new area and we're getting so much questions and we really appreciate the participation, we will also reflect and through our colleagues, those that are unanswered, make sure that actually we provide the response. So I'm sure that CISO wants to talk about a process from here on.
Sorry, there's just the last question from a person in the house. I'm just going to read the last chat from Mulebogeng. After June 2023, will SDPs now apply for accreditation with the QCTO for occupational qualifications? And with learning material, does Services SETA have the learning material in place already, or has the SDP have to buy material from learning development material? And then we've just got a question in the house.
Thank you. Yeah. No. Greeting everyone. Thanks, man, for giving me the chance for the last question I had. Mr. I heard you talking about the intent application, emphasizing on the point that it is vital for the SDP to make sure that there's a letter or an MOU from the entity or other stakeholders to ensure that there is a link or an affiliation between the SDP and the... So my question is, what happens if then the provider can also do the provider's task and also do the services, you know, do they still need to do an MOU? For instance, if I myself, I'm the provider, and I can also provide the services beside training, you know. And question number 2, is services SETA willing to move away from the usage of hard copy POEs, you know? I'm not sure if this question has been asked earlier, because I'm just coming in now, you know. Because I think it's somehow important to plan ahead now and use technological means, you know. Thank you.
Okay, with the last question, in terms of exiting learners, we need to have evidence. Yes, it is a POE. Can you have an electronic POE? If you have, I don't see a problem. There is a need to also just consult the e-learning and assessment policy. I think I'm now losing some of the questions. What was your second question? Okay. Oh, yes, yes. Remember, what we've said is that you must have an MOU with the workplace, which means that there must be a workplace. However, what's important is that you must apply for workplace approval and meet the requirements. So you can be both a training provider and a workplace, but you must meet the workplace requirements. And I'm losing some of the questions. I wonder if there's a question I haven't answered. Yes, after June 23, can the SDP apply for accreditation, I suppose against occupational qualifications? You can actually apply now for occupational qualifications. That's why we're saying realign, apply whilst there's time. The only thing you can not do after June 2024 is to enroll new learners. Nothing precludes you from applying for occupational qualification. And in fact, we urge you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dlamini. Colleagues, yeah, it's good that this particular session triggered so much interest, and it's because of its importance. This is exactly at the center of the very industry, and I think it's not a conversation we can conclude in one session. We will continuously engage. It's a new thing to all of us. We will be picking up issues around it. We will be in conversation. We also need to advise the powers that be as we move on what we pick up on the ground, so that our alignment and decision making is informed by the reality on the ground. But like all the good things, even this particular session, at some point, it must come to an end. So we are now almost at the end of our program, and to end this process, this session of today, I'm going to invite to the podium our accounting authority member, Ms. to come and give us closing remarks. I don't know why the sound is giving problems when it's the last item, when we've been doing so well. But I see it's okay now. You think we should change it? Okay, no, thank you very much. Over to you, ma'am.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, our honorable stakeholders, and those ones who are joining us at home. Good afternoon, Service SETA executives. And I am here to do closing remarks, but before I get to that, I just want to share with you the board's sector skills priorities for 2022-2023. And the speakers who were presenting here, they spoke to all of them. I just want to make it clear to you that it's not just what they wanted to present, but it's because the board has prioritized them. So priority number one, it's this sit-in. Foster inter-SETA collaboration and industry partnership to improve growth in the services sector, including SMMEs. It's this sit-in. It covers priority number one. Priority number two, secure workplace training opportunities working in collaboration with the industry employers and SETAs. Mr. Dladla, I don't see him. Mr. Dladla touched on how SETA is planning on forming partnership with employers, SMMEs, and other SETAs. So it has been addressed. Priority number three, work with QCTO and industry role players, complete and implement registered occupationally directed qualification. Mr. Lamin took us through the QCTO processes in registering new qualifications and their accreditation process thereof. Priority four, strengthen alignment between industry needs and services SETA supply through planning, implementation, and structured monitoring and evaluation. Ms. Mutla expressed the supply occupations in demand as we implement. This also was also touched on. The last priority, the development of organizational-wide monitoring and evaluation framework to improve, I'm not sure what happened here. Okay, I have it here. To improve performance management. On the 2nd and 3rd of November, the AA will be holding its strategical meeting, which is held annually, to address priority number 5. Everything that has been done and that will be done in this current financial year will be evaluated in that meeting, and then decision will be taken thereof. Lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you all for coming, for gracing us with your presence. At home, thank you for participating. DUT, thank you for allowing us to host this event. Marketing and communications team, Dudu, thank you so much. The executives, thank you. Have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sithole. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our program, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you. You've been indeed a wonderful audience, and for that, I'm going to give you a reward. And the reward is that please join me as I'm going to have lunch and enjoy lunch with me. So to those who are at home, thank you very much. This session is adjourned. Thanks.
Oh, the meeting today was quite informative. Everything was right on time. Everything was, they informed us of this time, we're going to be doing this and that at a time. And with all everything they had to explain, it was quite clear. And it was quite interesting, and it was kind of like what we wanted to hear and even a bit more.
I'm Eureka from EM Training Institute. I found the event very informative. I've learned a lot as well, and I'm looking forward to the transition as well into QCTO. I do have a lot of suggestions, which will be emailed to the senior management. I think one day is not enough, obviously, so I would like to actually attend more of these as well.
My name is Mpumi from Ubuhle Training and Development. We're based in Balito. We found this session very, very informative from the services SETA, especially when it comes to registering for the QCTO qualifications. We are moving into that field now, so that was very, very informative to know about the skills programs as well as about the occupational qualifications as well as the part qualifications. So thank you so much for the session, Services SETA.
They've opened up a bit of more platforms, so it's opened up for me to be able to try out new things and to try and work hand in hand with them, because they made it clear on us on how to go about on each channel and in each department. So that makes our job a bit easier, and it makes us a bit more helpful for us to be able to work with them, or for them to assist us.
Hi, my name is Praveen Naidu from LNR Training and Development. Firstly, it was good for the services SETA to have a stakeholder engagement like this. It's been very informative in terms of identifying the challenges from the stakeholders and working together in collaboration to find solutions going ahead. And also it was very informative in terms of the transition regarding the occupational qualifications and in terms of the way forward of being accredited for the occupational qualifications and the requirements. So we would like to thank Services SETA for hosting this event and sharing the necessary information with us as SDPs to get ourselves sorted and in readiness when the time comes up.